Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the USS Scorpion, the nuclear submarine that vanished with 99 men. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On the morning of May 27, 1968, the nuclear-powered attack submarine USS Scorpion was due to sail into Norfolk, Virginia, after a deployment in the Mediterranean. The harbor reception committee waited. Families waited. The submarine never appeared. 99 men were aboard. The United States Navy had lost a nuclear submarine, and for days, it had no idea where. The wreckage was eventually found 5 months later, 740 kilometers southwest of the Azores, at a depth of 3,000 meters. The hull had imploded. The Navy convened a court of inquiry that ran for months, reviewed hundreds of documents, and reached a conclusion that is almost uniquely unsatisfying for an official investigation. The cause of loss was unknown. The official position has never changed, but the classified acoustic recordings made by the Navy's SOSUS hydrophone network captured the precise moment the Scorpion was destroyed, and those recordings, withheld from families and the public for decades, tell a story that some analysts believe points not to an accident, but to something far more troubling. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the world of history's most enduring unsolved crimes, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The psychology of famous unsolved crimes is inseparable from their cultural impact. Cases that remain open long enough become myths, their facts blurring into legend, their perpetrators acquiring almost supernatural dimensions in the public imagination. Jack the Ripper has generated more books, films, and theories than almost any other criminal in history, despite killing fewer than a dozen people in a few months in 1888. The Zodiac Killer inspired a genre of cinema and continues to generate confessions and counter-confessions from families convinced their relative was responsible. D.B. Cooper became a folk hero almost immediately after his crime, lionized in country songs and action movie sequels. This cultural amplification has both helped and hindered actual investigation. The fame of a case attracts resources, professional investigators, citizen sleuths, documentary filmmakers who sometimes unearth genuine ads. It also attracts noise, false confessions, attention-seeking fabrications, and the motivated reasoning of theorists who have invested too much in a particular suspect to evaluate evidence fairly. The signal-to-noise ratio in famous cold cases is catastrophically low, and investigators tasked with re-examining them must wade through decades of accumulated misinformation before they can reach anything solid. Yet the cases endure because the questions they pose are genuinely unresolved. The perpetrator was never conclusively identified. The motive was never established. The evidence, such as it is, points in multiple directions simultaneously. These are not merely historical curiosities. They are open problems, waiting for the right technology or the right insight to finally crack them. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the USS Scorpion, the nuclear submarine that vanished with 99 men, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. USS Scorpion, SSN 589, was a skipjack-class nuclear-powered attack submarine commissioned in 1960. She departed Norfolk, Virginia in February 1968 for a Mediterranean deployment and was ordered to observe Soviet naval activity in the Atlantic on her return journey. Her last confirmed radio communication was on May 21, 1968. She was declared missing on May 27, 1968, and declared lost with all hands the same day. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly, it is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered all 99 crew members of USS Scorpion were killed. The wreckage was located in October 1968 by the oceanographic survey ship USS Mizar, approximately 740 kilometers southwest of the Azores archipelago, at a depth of 3,048 meters. Underwater photography showed the bow section separated from the stern and both sections severely damaged, consistent with implosion and impact with the seafloor. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine the Sound Surveillance System, SOSUS, a Cold War network of hydrophones on the Atlantic seafloor designed to detect Soviet submarines, recorded acoustic signals at the time and location of the Scorpion's disappearance. These recordings were classified for decades and were not made available to the Navy's Court of Inquiry in their full analytical form, limiting the inquiry's ability to determine the cause of loss. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, USS Scorpion had known mechanical issues before her final departure. Internal Navy documents, later declassified, revealed concerns about a hydraulic system connected to a torpedo tube that had not been fully resolved before the submarine sailed. 2 defective Mark 37 torpedoes were listed as aboard at departure. A 1967 near accident involving a torpedo on the Scorpion was revealed in declassified records years after the sinking. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Navy's Court of Inquiry, convened in 1968, reviewed all available evidence and concluded that the cause of the loss of USS Scorpion could not be determined. The official cause of loss remains unknown in U.S. Navy records. This is one of the only instances in U.S. naval history of a nuclear submarine being lost without an officially determined cause. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: a congressional inquiry in 1993, prompted in part by continued advocacy by crew families and by the public. Of investigative accounts reviewed the available classified and declassified material, and produced no new conclusions regarding the cause of loss. Crew families continued to press for answers, and several investigative journalists and former naval officers published competing analyses in subsequent decades. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the USS Scorpion, the nuclear submarine that vanished with 99 men. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that an accidental torpedo detonation caused the loss. A Mark 37 torpedo may have activated in its tube in a hot run, with the torpedo's propulsion engaging while still aboard the submarine. This is the Navy's preferred, though unconfirmed, explanation, consistent with known problems aboard the submarine before departure and with the acoustic signature analyzed from SOSUS recordings. Its weakness is that it cannot be confirmed without physical evidence of the torpedo from the wreckage, which has not been recovered. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that a Soviet torpedo or mine destroyed the Scorpion in retaliation for the earlier loss of the Soviet submarine K-129 in the Pacific, a theory advanced by journalist Ed Offley in Scorpion Down 2007, based on his interpretation of SOSUS acoustic data. The theory is disputed by naval analysts who argue the acoustic signature is more consistent with internal explosion, and that no Soviet documents recovered since the Cold War have confirmed any such operation against the Scorpion. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that structural failure or a battery explosion caused the loss, with the torpedo accident theory being a convenient official narrative. Scorpion-class submarines had experienced battery issues in the past, and an electrical fault triggering an explosion in the battery compartment would produce an acoustic signature potentially similar to a torpedo event. This theory is not supported by any specific technical evidence from the wreck, but remains in circulation among some former naval engineers. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the USS Scorpion, the nuclear submarine that vanished with 99 men, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes SOSUS acoustic recordings analyzed by naval experts produced an acoustic signature that most analysts describe as consistent with an internal explosion, specifically a pattern of sound pulses that could match a torpedo detonating inside a submarine pressure hull, followed by crushed depth implosion. The recordings were classified for decades, preventing independent acoustic analysis. Partial declassification has allowed some outside review, but the full SOSUS data set remains restricted. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented underwater photographic surveys of the wreck conducted by Navy remotely operated vehicles show the Scorpion's hull collapsed inward, consistent with the submarine losing pressure integrity and imploding as sea pressure overcame the hull at depth. The pattern of hull collapse and debris distribution has been analyzed to reconstruct the sequence of structural failure, though analysts disagree on what initially breached the pressure hull. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed declassified internal Navy documents released through Freedom of Information Act requests in the 1990s and 2000 confirmed that the unresolved torpedo tube hydraulic issue and the presence of two defective torpedoes were known before Scorpion departed on her final mission. A separate document confirmed the 1967 torpedo incident. The existence of known, unresolved ordnance problems strengthens the accidental torpedo detonation hypothesis without definitively confirming it. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the USS Scorpion, the nuclear submarine that vanished with 99 men. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The crew of USS Scorpion are memorialized at a monument in Norfolk, Virginia, and their names are inscribed on the Navy Memorial in Washington, D.C. The wreck site is treated as an official Navy grave. Remote surveys of the wreck have continued, using increasingly capable autonomous underwater vehicles, and the site has been photographed and mapped in detail. The geopolitical context of 1968, the same year, saw the loss of Soviet submarine K-129, and the CIA subsequently mounted Project Azorian to recover part of that vessel from the Pacific floor, adds layers of complexity that ensure the Scorpion will never be a simple accident story. The families of the 99 men lost have never received a definitive explanation for why their fathers, brothers, and sons did not come home. The official cause of loss remains undetermined. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the USS Scorpion, the nuclear submarine that vanished with 99 men, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of USS Scorpion ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.